Everybody, and welcome back to the Choose to Think Inspirational Podcast. Oh my goodness. I've been podcasting how many years now? We are 4.5 years in. A podcast has gone out every week. And sometimes on the show, I have so much fun. Actually, a lot of times on the show, I have a lot of fun. And truly, I think it's a privilege to be able to chat with so many different people who are on fire for the Lord, who are holding the torch for His word and His goodness and His truth. But today was such a fun episode. And I found myself just the time just slipped by so quickly, and I was just gripped by every story that my guest Karen had to share. Matter of fact, her name, let me get you her exact name, is Karen DeLoach. And let me tell you about her. She is an artist, an art mentor, an author, an actor, and a creativity specialist. She teaches art history and appreciation in college using textbooks that she's written. Okay, so how cool is that? She has a BFA in painting and theater, a master's in ceramics, and film certificate in film production. The arts are her passion, and she's so knowledgeable. She brought so many stories to share with you today that are intriguing, fascinating, just powerful stories that illustrate the connection between the left and right brains. We get into neuroscience, which I geek out about that. So she talked a little bit about that. She brings all that to the show. Besides being a practicing artist, and she says we are always practicing, she loves teaching, mentoring, coaching, and sharing about the miraculous healing power of art. She'll share a story just about that. Along with her husband, Jer, she hosts a home-based worship group called Imagine Gathering. And, right off the bat, we had so many things in common. We just connected so fast. I even got to ask her questions. I want you to stay tuned to the very end of the interview because I asked her questions, specific questions about, as a Nana, as a grandmother, how do I encourage creativity with my grandchildren? And what can I do? I mean, do I just put the paints in front of them and a blank piece of paper and say, okay, go at it? Or do I need to do something else? And she answers that question. It was so wonderful. So I think you're going to have a great time. And I think if you're going to hear yourself, you're going to find yourself. She's going to be talking your language, talking directly to you and asking you, how has God gifted you? What do you love to do? We're going to choose to think about this side of ourselves because this is a part of our emotional well-being. We're going to choose to think about our health in that sense. Where do you lose yourself? What tasks do you do that you could just spend hours doing? What did you like to do as a kid? Where's that sweet spot for you? And why not try it again? Why not take it up again? Why not learn something new? Try something new. Get a few lessons and learn how to improve at something because your brain loves to learn and it's going to be so healthy. We talk a lot about our brain health, and it's healthy for you to learn to do new things. It's healthy for you to lose yourself singing in the shower. It's healthy for you to lose yourself just perfecting that recipe. So I just love this, and I hope you enjoy this particular episode. And I really want you to reach out to her. You can reach her at getcreativewithkaren.com. All big one big long phrase there. Getcreativewithkaren.com. I'll have the link in the show notes. Please subscribe to this channel if you're viewing, or make it a favorite if you're just listening, and write a review for us. We would love to have that on Apple Podcasts. Please do that. But without further ado, here is Karen DeLoach. Welcome, Karen, to the Choose to Think podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Creativity, oh my goodness, it's one of my favorite things to chat about. The closest I got once on the podcast was interviewing a gentleman, and I think this was last year, if not the year before, about United States patents. And it was a fascinating interview. So if you're watching or viewing, you all might want to go back and listen to that. It was so interesting. I'll try to link the show in the show notes and in the description. But he talked extensively about creativity from a biblical worldview and kind of what the Bible has to say about being creative. And I just wondered, Karen, if you could can we just start there and talk about why being creative is kind of a part of God's design for us?
Amen. My mantra is we are all creative. We were born that way. So as we
Yes.
were made in the image of God and he gave us half of our brain is devoted to creativity, then it's
Yeah.
something that is for all of us, not just those who identify as artistes, if you would. So I
Yes.
support everything he's saying. And when I was a college student, art student, theater student, God gave me a praying roommate. And little did I know that she was going to break through this little heathen girl, bohemian heathen girl, and get me into the kingdom. But she did, God bless her. And
Wow.
I was asking God, what do you do with an artist? And, theater person, I have no idea how to serve you. I even went down some wrong trails before I got on the right ones. And so that was a big question. And when I finally had a teaching about Bezalel and how he was the
Oh.
very first mention of someone filled with Holy Spirit as God anointed him for the creativity for building the temple. And
Right.
it was kind of like, wow, this is cool, God. You've got an anointing on the arts. And I've been an artist for so long and an art teacher, filmmaker and theater person. So
Wow.
the arts are big in our lives. Our sons are all musicians. My husband is. So we're writers
Wow.
and it's our arena, if you would. The mountain of arts and entertainment is our specific arena. So I have felt that anointing and call for a very long time, specifically to this mountain, to take it back for the kingdom and to see God's people have a chance. I've worked with a lot of filmmakers, sat at their feet, men and women of God who have really literally gone around that mountain of movie making and been kept down because of their walk with the Lord and
Yeah.
their very obvious declarations of faith in Jesus Christ. And I just have a sense that that lid is going to be taken off. People are going to be moving into their proper places where God has really wanted to change the world. As we have exported a culture of perversion and disgusting
Yeah.
anti-biblical, anti-Christ values, we're going to see
Mhm.
that flipped in our generation, and that's part of the call I know I feel is to take it back for God's kingdom, to see this culture renewed and restored back to biblical foundations.
Gosh, that's a beautiful, beautiful answer. How does that actually happen? How do we do that? Is it just from folks like you? I just interviewed a gal named Siobhan O'Shaughnessy. I don't know if you know her, but she has a Christian channel on YouTube, and she has devoted her life also in the film industry and putting out content that is wholesome and faith-based. But is that how we do it? Is it, to raise up this generation? Is it just that we do it just one individual at a time, or how does that work?
Well, he's a God who doesn't despise small beginnings. So, but
That's
wherever you are,
true.
but we're not all called to arts and entertainment, but we all are called to be creative. And that's a little
Mm,
bit different focus because that's the question. If maybe you're called to the church, you're called to family, you're called to business, or you're called to government, education. There's different aspects of our culture you can feel a call towards, but the creativity is still going to be there. I mean, look at you. You're a podcaster. So as you have combined both the all the left brain skills of technology and
yeah.
scheduling and organization and all of these timeliness things, those are all very beautiful left brain skills. But
Mhm.
also to pull in that right brain, you are creating new content that's never been here before. And so
Yeah.
it's that combination of left brain, right brain activity that seems to bring us to our most brilliance. That was always, even Jesus, as he told parables to bring truths of the kingdom to the people that they could relate to. He was a storyteller. He didn't
Mhm.
just preach at people. He taught them in a place where they could really see what he was saying in even in small ways. And so this aspect of creativity we're all really truly called to. And that's the question that I ask everyone, what is your creative gifts? Where do they lie? And a way to find them.
Mhm.
What did you enjoy when you were 5 and 6?
Mm.
What did you love to do? Did you like spinning in the playground because you like to dance? Did you, like me, direct plays in the playground? Did you like
Right.
drumming on things? I had one of my sons, everything was a drum. And of course, he became a musician and a drummer. So you can look at what you love. Statistically, they say that 98% of 5 and 6 year olds are creative geniuses.
Wow.
Only 2% of adults. So the question is, what happens in those years? And I would like to propose that part of it is this education system we have in this Western world that emphasizes, to the detriment of the right brain, all the left brain skills, which are wonderful. I'm not negating them. It's about having both, not one or the other. It's bringing our right brain skills up to snuff to our left brain skills. So you can, left brain skills are measurable. Memorization and orderliness and details like that are all part of our left brain brilliance. And those are what a lot of people have jobs for, right? They can find jobs that way. But the right brain is very sensitive. It's a side of our brain that is intuitive and inventive. It's imaginative. And when we are God's people submitted to Christ, that imagination takes on just supernatural prophetic revelation. And we can all have access to that because he made sure we all had a right brain. So it's a matter of connecting them and finding activities in our life that we love to do, that gives us joy, releases serotonin, the happiness chemical, even 20 minutes a day. And so, I've put together a free pop-up podcast for your viewers to access through www.getcreativewithkaren.com. And anyway, in that podcast, I go through a whole list of different ways that people can access their creative right side of their brain.
I love that. And you kind of touched on so many different aspects of what it means to even be creative. But I have a kind of a new but very dear friend. You know how sometimes you meet someone and you're like, okay, we're going to be really good friends, or we just have a connection there. And she gifted me with something that was so extraordinarily beautiful. But I was really speechless. And it's a journal essentially, and that's not even a good word to describe it. But and I don't know the hours that she spent crafting this. And I was overwhelmed. I even cried when I was going through it because it is just something so I don't even have words for it. Creative doesn't do it justice just to say, oh, that's creative. No, that is a masterpiece. And I talked to her a little bit about the aspect of creativity. And I was telling her, oh, wait, guess who I'm going to have on the show? And you're going to love this episode. I was telling her that. And she mentioned something that she said, I have to create. I just have to create. I've got to give myself space in order to create. And I could understand that so easily. You mentioned, what did you like to do when you were 4 or 5? I've actually discovered things, Karen, at my age now that I never knew I loved, like creating graphics on Canva, for example. I could
Perfect.
spend forever doing that. I love to do promotional assets and just, oh, that font. I don't like that font. Let me try this font and those colors. And oh, this pops. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know I loved doing that until I was doing things for the podcast. And so even now I do my vision board using Canva. I do digital vision board, but then I just print it. So it's just like a little one-page thing. But I know that especially we as women and men, but the most of my listeners tend to be women, and we all do have something creative. And I'm glad that you are putting, the scaffolding is there and you're putting the flesh to it really, and the stones in there to help us all tap into that aspect of who we are, because we need to slow down and just allow ourselves to have fun in that way, don't we?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Albert Einstein, one of his quotes is creativity is intelligence having fun. Now, he's
Amen.
considered one of the greatest geniuses of the 20th
All
century,
times.
and he was a huge creative. He was an inventor, and he held in high esteem creatives. So, as we look at, well, what do I love to do? What brings me joy? What
Right.
kind of fun things can I do? Even something as simple as cooking, for your
Cooking.
family,
Yep.
you're trying these recipes, right? And how many of us have completely stuck to recipes or just said, well, you know what? I don't have cumin, but maybe almond will work,
I
just
know.
substituting things. And or my family would really like to have more garlic than that. We're
Right.
tweaking these recipes, we're trying new things. We found old recipes from our grandma, and I add
Right.
whatever. So that is engaging left brain, right brain, and you really do overcome things like brain fog when you're
Yeah.
engaging left brain, right brain, because you're creating these new neural pathways. Well, I didn't
Mm.
understand that all my decades as an artist and an art teacher. And I've taught all ages, homeschooling, college,
Right.
created books for my college classes. But what I started seeing happen, I wanted to find out more about the science behind it.
Yeah. Let's
Because
talk about that. I geek
yes,
out on neuro. Talk about
I
that. Keep
do
going.
this. I had a young man who had ADHD and dyslexia, and quite frankly was depressed. He
Mm.
wasn't thriving in school. His parents were homeschooling him, and he just was not doing well in his academics. So they
Mm.
brought him to my studio, and yeah, I started teaching him sculpture and drawing and painting, and he thrived. And
Wow.
I would enter my students into a youth art competition, and they would get ribbons and they get awards, and it changed his life. He found something he was good at, which gave him the confidence he needed to really find the ways to compensate for his disabilities, mental
Right.
disabilities. And he graduated from high school. So there he is,
Mm.
successfully navigated those hard years for him when tragedy struck. And this is just after winning not just first place in the youth art competition, but best in the entire show.
My word.
He was riding that wonderful high when he got a brain infection that caused a stroke,
Oh,
and he was
wow.
paralyzed on the right side of his body. They didn't even know if he was going to live. They had to replace his skull with plastic. It's a
Wow.
plastic skull. He left the hospital 4 months later, couldn't
Mhm.
talk. He was dragging the right side of his body with a walker, and as they were trying to keep his right hand from curling up uselessly. So his mom brought him right back to the studio.
My
And
word.
I'm not an art therapist, but I thought, well, you have your left hand. Let's go ahead and try drawing and painting left-handed. And in a short amount of time, he was really doing well. He could draw, he could paint, he could write now left-handed. Now sculpture was hard because it takes two hands, and that was a little
Sure.
frustrating, but he was doing so well. I got a call from his neurosurgeon. He's like, okay, I've never called anybody's art teacher before. What are you doing? David, he said, not only is he stronger with his weak hand than I am, and I'm a surgeon, but he's having healing on
Wow.
the right side of his body. I was
Amen.
like, what? He said, keep doing it. Well, I'm happy to say that that young man started being able to talk and walk. And you look at him now, he's not in depression anymore. He's got his sense of humor. He's got a funny, dry sense of humor. He's a handsome young man living his
Wow.
best life. He's still stronger with his left hand than his right hand, but he can walk, he can talk. It's a miracle. And from what I've studied, there is a plasticity to our brain that when one part gets broken or hurt or damaged or wounded, then another part can take over. He had already been building left brain, right
Mm.
brain connections as a young art student that stood in good stead as he was developing new ones with this infirmity. And he can do everything left-handed now. And it started me on this journey of finding out more and more of how God has wired us to get so many benefits from utilizing our creative side of our brains.
Wow. And I thank you so much for sharing that powerful story. That is so encouraging. And the whole time I think I felt my blood pressure going up or something. I'm like, oh my goodness, in a good way, that you're so speaking my language, because some of our listeners and viewers, they get trapped in faulty thinking, which is really the essence of the show and what we talk about, and how, yes, we can build new neural pathways in our brain. Our brains are moldable. And if we're stuck in depression, which was a part of my story several years ago, and in part it was my thoughts that got me there, but the good news was that it was also my thoughts. When I chose thoughts that did not limit God, when I chose truth filled, life filled thoughts about who God says he is, who he says I am, and what he says about my scenario, suddenly that was what I was focusing on, and everything just began to change. And
Wow.
so I know there was healing in my brain. God tells us to take every thought captive, to be transformed through the renewing of our mind. And certainly that can help. And you've described this individual who has, through art and through the new, learning something new. It is
Mhm.
so good for us to learn something new. It
It
is so good for us to do something backwards. Like if we always put our right shoe on first, stop doing that. And for a week, try to do it on your left foot. Start with your left foot. Drive a different way to work tomorrow. Drink a new beverage. Just, there's so many, it's endless what we can do to keep our brains healthy. And then, of course, we can get into what's good for our gut is good for our brain. We've got that vagus nerve. I mean, I could just really keep going on and on about that. I just love it. But case in point that you bring to the discussion, and that is just amazing. How rewarding was that for you? I can't
I
even
know,
imagine.
I know, and I'm still very close to his family, of course, but, you're talking about something really important that's part of what I believe is those words. Um,
Yes.
I believe so strongly, and I've always had this, my studio and now my online, this is a no criticism zone.
Yeah.
As I describe, that left brain is very sensitive. It's wounded easily. Now, how many of us have
Mhm.
stories of being told very young, you can't paint, you can't draw, you can't sing, you can't
Right.
dance? There's somebody that it was impactful in your life that said words that really
Mm,
shut you down, and you became convinced of those words. For me, as a teenager, I went to art school because I could do theater there too, and I could draw. I had really good drawing instruction and I had good drawing skills and I loved drawing people and places, but I wanted to learn to paint better. And I went to art school and I took four different painting professors and they all came to the same conclusion. I'm not a painter, that I can't
mm,
paint. That they used four-letter words to describe my art. And I was devastated. And unfortunately, I came into agreement with them and I
mm,
went into sculpture and ceramics, which I still love and I still do, but I wanted to paint, and as I married and had started having these beautiful little baby boys, I wanted to paint them. I love painting people. And I would start painting and I'd reach this point and I couldn't finish them. And I ended up with all of these unfinished canvases for 10 years because in
wow.
there was that left brain bully saying, you're not a painter. You're just proving those professors right. You can't paint. You're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. Maybe some of your listeners have those kind of words that hinder what they really want to do. Well,
Mhm.
fortunately, by the grace of God, he sent a mentor into my life, somebody who had been to the old school, Chicago Art Institute, and he had the fundamentals and he taught me how to paint. He helped me
Interesting.
develop my skills and practice until I was good enough to accomplish the kind of painting that I wanted to do. And as
Wow.
a result, I became an award-winning artist and a better
Wow.
teacher because that's when I realized we have to protect that sensitive right brain and not be critical. My professors,
Mhm.
I'm sure they weren't set out to depress my life and my career for
Right.
10 years. They thought they were doing me a favor. And the sad part is that I came into agreement with those negative words, and they were haunting me until someone proved them wrong and helped me develop my skills till I could be as good a painter. I mean, we call ourselves practicing artists. We're always getting better. I'm always watching other people's techniques. Then, even my mom, when she gave us crayons as a little girl, the paper wasn't big enough, never was big enough. So I started coloring on the walls. Well, that got me into big trouble, let me tell you. But my mom couldn't know that eventually people were going to pay me big bucks to paint on their walls. I'm a muralist over decades. I
That's
like
right.
working big. Anyway, that was, really just making a point about words, even our own self think, what we're letting, I call it the right brain bully, trying to stop us from doing something. How about singing? Do you sing? Victoria, are you a singer?
Okay, so my sister has a phenomenal voice, and I love to sing, and I have sung in choirs, but I always kind of need someone standing next to me in order to just hit it
I
just right.
relate
But
to that.
but I've
Absolutely.
got a good, strong voice, and I can hit it if I can just get it just right. So I'm a good asset in a choir. It's nice to have my voice, but if I were to right now sing you a song, which I will not, but if I were to do that, I could sing maybe 10 notes on target, on tune. And then suddenly something would come out and I could even hear, that's not right. So I love to sing. I sing my heart out when the praise and worship music is big and powerful to me. So I enjoy it, though I would not exactly call myself a quote good singer. I'm maybe an average singer, but it doesn't bother me that I'm not, because I'll tell you this, Karen, I know that if I wanted to devote the time and energy to that and to really get better, like you wanted to be a painter, you wanted to be a better painter, you had that vision, you had that desire and that gumption to say, no, I'm going to thank goodness for your mentor, right? Who stepped in and was encouraging to you and opened the door a little bit so that you could really walk through that. But and I've often thought about taking singing lessons. So I know that if I wanted to get better and to really sing, that I could do that. It's just not one of my like top 20 desires right now. So, but I think I could get better by taking lessons and such.
Let me encourage you. I read a study. They actually study people who sing in the shower. And for me, it's singing in the car when I'm all by
Yeah,
myself
me
listening
too.
to
That's what
songs.
I do.
I get in the car and I'm immediately belting out worship songs, the ones that don't have a wide,
I know, I know.
you know,
That's right.
excuse me. And
That's okay.
this study was showing what happens in the brain when people sing in the shower. So, there you are, rub-a-dub-dub, scrubbing in the tub.
Hmm.
You're not thinking about anything. You're not trying to solve problems. You're using your left brain because its movement is orchestrated through the left brain. But there you are, singing along your favorite song, worship song, and you get out, you're feeling good, you're dry, and an idea comes to you. I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about it that way. Or maybe there's a phrase for a chapter heading, you're working on your book, or a
Hmm.
problem that you hadn't thought about this angle. Because as you've been singing in the shower, you are utilizing left brain, right brain, making these neural connections, operating in your most brilliance as you're just scrubbing along, singing along, and that is the way the left brain work together to make us our most brilliant selves.
Oh, that's so cool, isn't it? Isn't
So
that
keep
cool?
singing, keep
Oh,
singing. Don't let anybody
well,
stop you.
I'll tell you, my husband Jim and I, we have this song, and we used to always sing it together. So I wonder sometimes if we can even combine that with community, how much more, impactful that can even be. And certainly that's what you're doing with your students. You're putting them in an environment that's safe, that is, just a funsy kind of place to be where expression is just happening, and it's just so amazing. So I will keep singing, because yeah, and there are plenty of science backed evidence to suggest that, man, singing is really really good for you, really good for you, and it can relieve stress. The cortisol decreases, and all the feel good, the endorphins are piped up, and or so
Serotonin, that's right.
serotonin, yes, all of
Even
those.
people
That's
that don't
great.
identify in any way with the arts, for instance, soldiers. So Walter Reed Hospital did a
Hmm.
study with their soldiers that were still struggling. They'd dealt with the medical issues. They'd had even, all kinds of therapy, but they did a summer program where they introduced them to some other ideas and other therapies. At the end, they surveyed them, and overwhelmingly, the soldiers replied what they enjoyed best was art.
Isn't that
So
something?
here's soldiers that loved learning about art and trying it and painting and sculpture. I'm not sure exactly what they did at Walter Reed, but it really helped them in their healing recovery. So it's got a lot of wellness. My program's called Art as Self-Therapy, Wellness Through Creativity.
Yeah.
And these are things that really God has shown me that He's wired us to walk in this wellness and wholeness. And
Yeah.
it's part of our lives. And no matter, as you look at your life and say, what did I love when I was 4 or 5? Can I do it again? Even
Yeah.
things like you've discovered with Canva. I didn't know I liked design and
Right.
graphics and putting these together. I'm sure it's worked out as a homemaker that you've been really good at designing and decorating your house, and those things have overlapped with Canva. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, no, I have to
You and
interrupt
your
that one. No, Karen.
No,
I
no, you're not
am
a
not
designer.
I am not a decorator. I have a dear friend who I call and I'm like, can you I get overwhelmed with that. Like, does this chair look good here? And what painting goes there? And how do I arrange this? Yet she can do it. And then we could even talked about giftings because, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but sometimes we've really got to find that place where we're gifted and where we have fun, because maybe I won't be an NFL player or a NBA player, right? But because I just don't have some of the physical characteristics that might be perform a little better in those particular avenues. But my friend is she has the vision for it. She is so gifted. She designed the front beds of our house with our flowers. She's a gardener, and she could see it, and she would show me these elaborate pictures, and I'm like, oh, that's so overwhelming to me. I just plant them. Just tell me where. Just do it. And even
That's my
arranging
husband for
a
me.
bookshelf. Yeah.
Like,
So
I'll
some
make them, you
people
hang them up, you put them in place, you do what you need to do. But yes, I
exactly. She
relate to
loves
that.
it. She
Mhm.
enjoys it. It is not difficult for her. Writing, for example, is not difficult for me. Some people are like, "Whoa, I couldn't write a thank you note if you asked me to." I mean, they don't even know the thought of putting a pen to a paper is so overwhelming to them. They
Mm.
just can't, they're out of their comfort zone big time. Yet we could do that so easily. And so there is, I guess, an element of God's given each of us unique talents and gifts. And can we find that sweet spot? Can you find that spot where you lose yourself, where you have fun, where it's kind of easy for you, comes naturally? We have a bend for that, people might say. So, that's fun to be there. And if we have time to invest in it, it's really, really a fun place to
Well,
be.
to get the benefits only takes 20 minutes a day. And actually some studies saw
Wow.
15 or 18 minutes a day releases that serotonin. It doesn't take a lot of time. Even something
Mm,
as simple as taking a stroll. Now, I'm not talking about a
right.
Fitbit walk where you're counting your steps, you're doing
Yeah.
aerobics, which of course is good. We know all the benefits of that. I'm talking about a stroll, or maybe you're
Yeah.
walking with your spouse or a significant other or a child or grandchild or your dog, and
Right.
you're just observing. You're in the moment. As you said, you're focused on the moment. You're noticing the sky. Maybe the sun is setting,
Right.
or you're smelling the flowers or hearing the birds tweet, or the
Yeah.
children playing. And as you're in that moment, you are actually combining that left brain, right brain. You're making those neural connections. You're problem solving without even trying. I mean, God has wired us so brilliantly to
Mm,
be in the moment. He said you can't you let the things behind go. You don't worry about
Right.
tomorrow. You be in the moment. And it's so hard for us in our
Mm,
culture. We've been trained to plan and and there's certain things that we have to do in this world. But if we can take those moments to just say, I'm in this moment, I'm going to enjoy this moment right where I am. Maybe it's even my 92-year-old mother was coloring with her great granddaughters. And she called me, she said, I've heard you talk about this, Karen, but it's true. I always thought coloring was just for the children, but I feel so relaxed doing it. I feel that peace. I said, way to go, Mom. That's good. And she's very precise. She would never think of coloring outside the line. But I just want to encourage your listeners, if you've had words spoken over you that have hurt
Mm,
you and have convinced you that something that you wanted to pursue, you wouldn't be good at. I just want you to allow the Lord to heal that part of your heart and your
mhm.
soul and say, yes, you can. If it was there when you were 4 and 5 and 6, it's still there.
That's right.
So, I mean, I've had people tell me they were told they're they couldn't color because they were outside the lines. And so in third grade, someone said, let's color. And she's like, I can't color. She was already convinced that she
Wow.
couldn't do it. So I'm so convinced of what I've seen. It's never too late. You're never too old. You can do it. I'm working with a man who could paint and draw. He was an engineer, but his hobby was painting and drawing, and he'd had a lot of lessons through the years. And then he was diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Mm,
So right at retirement, when he had plenty of time to follow these things, he had laid it down and was really depressed about it for about 3 years. And his son came to one of my workshops and said, "I want you to meet my dad." And we've connected. He lives about 1,200 miles away, but we can be right here together on Zoom. And he is not only learning to draw and paint left-handed because his right hand is the one that's shaking.
shaky.
uh, He also, as he's working with me, has picked up his pen with his right hand and drew without even realizing he was. So he
Wow.
was so surprised that it could work, that this could help him get out of number one, depression, number two, bring some healing to his own body. But there's some supernatural healing that God does with us when we really seek to be walking in the anointing that he has over us.
I think so. Oh, I love all of your stories and your illustrations. They are so powerful, really. They're so encouraging. But I have one huge question, and it's a personal question. Okay, so I have four grandchildren, and I watch three of them one day a week, every week. And it's such a blessing because my four children and their families live close. So I get to do this. We call it Nana Day. And I have outside my office here this humongous cupboard. And then I have another big kind of a closet area type thing structure filled with crayons, pencils, paints, like crafting. We call it it's the craft chest. It has anything you want. And I'll add to it. It has string, it has beads, it has glue, it has this, it has cutting things, it has all kind of construction paper and uh, stamp, everything is there. Molding, burning wood. I've got it all there because I was a homeschooler, also homeschool mom for 20 years. So, I collected a
22
lot.
here.
Yes. And I
Yeah,
kept it all. I kept most of it.
that's awesome.
So when the grandkids come, sometimes we're outside all day or we do different things, but occasionally and fairly often we'll go to the craft cabinet and they'll want to do something. My question is, like, for example, even making a birthday card for someone. Let's make a card for my mom. Her birthday is coming up. So they were getting out there, all their stuff, and they just go, and some of them will glue down string on it and just how much should I guide them or direct them in that? Should it just be, even with painting, like I have watercolors, I have, the acrylics, I have the washable paints, I've got tempera paints, I've got everything, but I'm not really like an art teacher, so I'm out of my comfort zone a little bit. I don't know how structured I should be with them. Should I just say, here are the paints, go to it? Should I try to teach that, like learn on my own a technique and then teach them that technique? Should it be just a free for all? Because some of them might like row, one of them is three and he's gonna it's, what he paints is just whatever.
Yeah.
But the 10-year-old can probably hone in on some different techniques if I would teach them, but I don't know whether I should let them just do the free for all or be more instructional and try to teach them techniques. Does this make sense?
Yeah,
Should
that's a
I
really,
should I
really good
guide
question.
them or just let them have fun?
Well, I can tell you as an artist, sometimes the scariest thing is a white sheet of paper or a white canvas. And that's probably true for writers sometimes too. You're looking at
Yeah.
this empty place. And so sometimes having structure and having a specific thing. All right, what does branch inspire you? Or having something, like you said, this is for Nana's mama or great grandma, whatever they call
Yeah.
her. This is her birthday. So you're already giving structure. This is going to
Right.
celebrate her life or be something that bring her happy. So having structure, having parameters really does our right brain good. We like parameters because we
Okay.
tend to be so scattered that when you give me a focus, it really does help my creative bent find a focus. So that's always a good idea. Um, I started teaching art, I say 6 and above, but somehow there'd always be a 5-year-old in there. There reaches a point, depending upon the child, when they're ready for instruction. But anybody over 5 and 6, instruction is always good. And there are plenty of teaching videos. I've got a book. I'll
How
send
to
you my
draw.
my how to draw. It's got absolute exercises, and it starts with throwing and catching a ball because
Okay.
eye-hand coordination for sports is the same thing we use for drawing what you can see. And so if you
Right.
can draw what you see, it gives your imagination all kinds of ammunition and fuel and really good material to explore from. So I love instruction, and it doesn't have to be long, age appropriate. 5 minutes of just, okay, let's
Right.
try this exercise with this book. You start with contour line drawings, one continuous line, like laying your hand on the paper and drawing around your hand, right?
Hmm.
What 3-year-old can even do that one. But now let's look at it and draw it and not look at the paper. And this one's hard for adults because we're so product oriented and
Interesting.
perfectionistic. I call it the
Mhm.
paralysis of perfectionism can keep us from really trying new things because we're so hard on ourselves. But as we look at our hand and not our paper, we're doing the same thing we did on the paper with our hand down, but now we're just following our hand. And it's always a little wobbly, but it still looks like a hand. It's like, okay, let's go on to the next thing. I don't let them look at the paper. And kids
I
love
see.
this. They don't have the same hangups we adults do with always being product oriented until they get about teenagers. Then preteens, teens
Mm.
can get really iffy about that. But these are good ways to get them out of that product, that it's the process that brings so many benefits, and the product will get better. So even
Yeah.
even my gentleman who's 77 years old, shaky right hand, for him, using the left hand was like a child learning how to use his left hand to draw and paint. And it didn't take long before he was seeing improvement. I mean, almost immediately start seeing improvement. And so I know
Wow.
that's true as you let your children have just a few minutes of instruction or some parameters really
Hmm.
helps creativity fly. Even doing a vision board, as you were describing a vision board. What do
Hmm.
you want to be when you grow up?
Hmm.
So let's cut out, I've got some magazines, let's cut out pictures. And then one of them wants to be an astronaut. He's going to cut out pictures of space or moon or whatever. Or
Sure.
another wants to be a fireman, or I want to be a dancer. So they can make their own little vision boards. So simple
Yeah.
projects like that can be really meaningful in between times of just whatever you want to do is fine. You
Yeah, because I can, this is so helpful, but like I put the paint out there and they just start kind of putting it on there on the paper, I guess, just to fill it up. And invariably someone will do a sun, someone will do maybe a mountain and maybe a tree, and then dot the red apples on there, which, and I'm like, I mean, it's fine, I don't care, but I've often thought maybe I need to learn how to how do you draw a tree, or are there ways to draw a tree? What my one oldest granddaughter, she does draw right now. she's also homeschooled. And so I don't know if you've seen that curriculum, but it's you draw it, then you're writing at the same time, but they're taking you step by step on drawing. Generally, they're animals, and it's very good. And she loves doing that. And so I know she's doing a lot of that in particular, but the paint can be a little bit intimidating. You got all these lovely colors, and you're like, gosh. And then of course it ends up being a mixture for the youngest, right? It's this big brown blackish,
They
just
always paint the colors on the same spot, don't they?
I know.
It's the rainbow isn't a row of colors, it's all the colors on top of each other. And it's hilarious.
Exactly.
It's so universal. My
Yeah,
grandkids are in Germany, and I got to do art lessons in German last winter. And I found that the little tiny ones, my grandchildren are 3, and if they're going to cook with them, how are you going to cook? Well, you're not going to let them just do whatever they want, right?
that's
You've got a
true.
recipe, and they have their apron on, and you're gonna measure for them, and then they're gonna dump it, and then they're gonna stir it. So the parameters really, I mean, they know they're cooking. They are having a blast cooking, even the little boy, my little grandson. So it's always good to have some parameters, but
Oh,
it
I
doesn't
love
mean you have to
that.
spend the whole time teaching or figuring it out. Don't
Right.
make
That analogy really hit home. I love that analogy because yes, that's exactly right. We do a lot of cooking, and I can't decide whether I like to bake these one cookies, just I like to bake them, or whether it's I really like to eat them.
of
Maybe a
course
little
we
of both.
do. Of
But
course.
yeah, now that you kind of said that, I'm like, okay, that makes good sense to me. Just offer a few parameters. Plus, it also is a little bit challenging to them. It's not as easy as just, throwing something on a page. It takes it one little teeny step
Mhm.
further
Yeah.
that might help them, in the long run. So, oh my goodness, I think, Karen, we could just chat forever. I have like a huge list of questions. I don't think I asked you one of them. We just got off on our own, but so fun. Tell everybody again, though, where they can contact you and reach out to you.
Yeah, I'd love to have them check out my pop-up podcast, and they can get a registration page on www.getcreativewithkaren.com. And that pop-up podcast is 3 20-minute episodes, really helping you understand more about your own creative gifting, and then
Mhm.
challenging you, to do it. And hopefully you can get information there on how to contact me, and we can talk about personal creativity. And I certainly offer not just my book, give me an email, I'll send my book, but also I'd love to work with them. I can work with kids of all ages and adults of all ages.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for your hard work, and may you continue to be a blessing and a kingdom influencer. It's just awesome to have you on the show.
Thank you, my privilege.